Gather around, fellow Gravity Falls fans, and let me tell you an old tale from the past, but not so long ago that you need to be an OG fan to remember it. This right here is the story of the time Gravity Falls beat out almost every other major TV show on Hulu that you could think of. The year is 2018. Specifically March. GF had only ended 2 years ago and I had been a fan for a little over a year. The biggest cartoon on Disney was Star vs. the Forces of Evil, DuckTales Season 1 was still airing, Amphibia and the Owl House had just recently been greenlit, and GF fans were hyped as Lost Legends cover had just recently been revealed. On the 10th of March, the streaming service Hulu announced it was hosting a tournament on Twitter where it would have 64 of the most popular shows on it go head-to-head in a competition to see who would come out as the best among its viewers. As they called it, it was the Hulu TV Tournament. As we approached the event's start date on March 15th, Gravity Falls found its way on the listing as coincidentally the 15th show to make the cut in the animation division, or the second last. The other divisions were classics, comprising of old shows from the past, the original 16, which I assume were original shows that Hulu had made or owned, and a wildcard selection of another 16 shows. Now, before you wonder why GF would be on Hulu, keep in mind that this was 2018. We were still over a year away from Disney Plus launching, so Hulu was the only streaming service that had Gravity Falls at the time in America. Now, when you look at the shows that Gravity Falls would be up against, it was scary. It was going up against some big name shows in its own division. The Simpsons, Rick and Morty, Adventure Time, and right off the bat, Family Guy. And even if by some miracle Gravity Falls could beat them out and make the finale, the other divisions had some even bigger shows it would have to then fight to win overall if they made the finale too, like Seinfeld, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, SNL, and Brooklyn Nine-Nine. The odds were stacked against our little Disney cartoon from the get-go. Eventually though, round 1 began as planned on March 15th! This is not a drill! Gravity Falls' first opponent was none other than the adult heavyweight and funny moments on YouTube factory itself, Family Guy. But despite having an obviously larger stance and relevancy in the mainstream to it, Gravity Falls not just beat Family Guy, but annihilated it. To be honest, I think we all saw it coming. Peter Griffin's L didn't even see it getting a full quarter of the votes. Though I think part of that was cause Alex Hirsch tweeted about it and got the GF fandom to act. Even I chimed in after the win with a good old yes we stan. As the Family Guy community left in defeat, Gravity Falls fans celebrated their first victory. But it may have been short-lived given GF's next rival on the 17th of March was none other than the show widely regarded as the one that started the era that Gravity Falls thrived in. Adventure Time. Surely Adventure Time was gonna win this. I mean, Gravity Falls is good and beloved, but how can it hold its own against such a classic and important cartoon like Adventure Time? It was over, right? Gravity Falls fans weren't gonna lose this one, and it won with 62.3% of the votes. A far narrower win compared to the one against Family Guy, so kudos to that in that sense to Adventure Time fans who gave GF a run for its money. That's not to say GF didn't at one point nearly lose, as in some early screenshots, Adventure Time had a comfortable lead at first. In fact, it wasn't until about 6 hours before the poll ended that GF took the lead and held it. Even Hulu had taken notice of this win and dubbed Gravity Falls the Cinderella team of the event. While we had won yet again, there was now a truly major threat between us making the next win or defeat. Gravity Falls was now up against a show, now rival, that it was deeply connected to. Rick and Morty. Now again, keep in mind that this was 2018, back when Rick and Morty was still super popular, people were excited about it, and Justin Roiland was still seen in the good light, rather than for the weirdo that he really is, to put it lightly. That said, the fandom by this point had become tainted. This was several months after the Szechuan sauce incident after all, if you remember that fiasco. Nevertheless, on March 22nd, Gravity Falls went up against its biggest rival yet. Rick and Morty was a far more mainstream show, with a more current fandom, and despite its close connection with GF and toxic fandom, it was the show many were probably more likely going to vote for. And yeah, sure, it did seem that way at first, as you can see Rick and Morty began to crush GF. And this time, it held its ground for a lot longer. The two went toe-to-toe for hours until about 3 hours before the poll closed. Both shows were tied. Until, as we've already established, Gravity Falls took the lead and won the round. But it was not by much. Only by 54%. It was very close this time. Too close. And it only showed us just how harder it was going to get from here. Gravity Falls may have defeated the biggest show it was up against so far, but that didn't mean bigger rivals were not coming up. But luckily for GF, the next show it was up against took out what may have been the show that truly could have ended Gravity Falls' run. It was now up against Bob's Burgers, which as we know also stars Kristen Schaal in it, so it was now a battle against two of the most iconic shows that she starred in. But the show that it beat out to now go against Gravity Falls was The Simpsons. And I mean, say what you want about modern Simpsons nowadays, but I can only imagine how nasty things would have gotten had it been Gravity Falls against it for the win. And to be honest, I don't think even the most hardcore Gravity Falls fans who know about The Simpsons would have complained about losing to it. But just because it wasn't The Simpsons we were fighting, didn't mean it was easier. Bob's Burger won for a reason, and its fans were not going to go down without a fight. They took the lead as far as they could and held it. As the GF fandom voted and narrowed the gap, the only savior for it was time to run out. And of course, it did. But not in their favor. You know the drill by now. 4 hours in and Gravity Falls took the lead. It was all over after that. Gravity Falls won this round with 64.2% of the votes. A far bigger win than against Rick and Morty, but not a guarantee that total victory was still yet secure. Now, this was the first one that I do remember where some nasty arguments briefly spawned between Bob's Burgers and Gravity Falls fans. But those tweets are lost to time now from deleted, private, or suspended accounts. I was younger and crazy about Gravity Falls back then, but I was more so tweeting at Alex Search and trying to get mention of the event from him and to get people to vote for GF, not so much arguing with other fandoms as I saw some others do. In retrospect, aside from the Family Guy win, I'm glad Alex never tweeted about these other shows, as it showed that many of the wins GF had were from genuine fans voting, which lessened the risk of accusations of cheating from Alex's follower base voting as they were told. Not that that was against the rules or exclusive to Gravity Falls, as other shows did the same thing with their fans, creators, and even official accounts of them tweeting about it. But regardless, Gravity Falls won and secured its spot in the semi-finals. But now Gravity Falls was graduating out of fighting animated shows and heading into battle against live-action shows from the other divisions. And the first one it was up against was a classic. Golden Girls. Now, this is a show well before my time, but it has that age factor that likely means nostalgia may play a factor. Remember, Gravity Falls was still a fairly young show back then, barely half a decade old, and Golden Girls had beaten out some big shows like I Love Lucy, a show I mainly remember as being the origin of that gag from Drake and Josh and from history class for having cigarette ads.
Philip Morris, in the new and exclusive Snap Open Pack. How about that? Isn't that wonderful?
It looked like Gravity Falls was going to lose, but as this one Tumblr post I saw mentioned, votes for Golden Girls were on the decline while votes for Gravity Falls were increasing. Did that mean GF was going to win? Well, we now of course know the answer, but back then it was debatable. That said, things looked pretty civil as Gravity Falls fans prepared to go against the classic, but ready to accept defeat if it came. After a bit of a delay, the voting began, and again, Golden Girls took the lead from the start, but with the momentum of the fandom and help from the mystery of GF, Gravity Falls won with 54.9% of the votes. A still narrower victory, but a victory nonetheless. The show was unstoppable. While Golden Girl fans mourned that the youngsters from Oregon had taken the old girls down, victory now seemed almost certain for us. Gravity Falls was about to make history. Or was it? Because while it had defeated all shows on its side, it was now time to face the winner of the semifinals on the other side. And like it, the show that now stood between us winning was a formidable adversary. It was a show that had the same level of love and attention by its fans, who were just as hungry for the win as Gravity Falls fans were. Brooklyn Nine-Nine. A show very much at the time still airing and widely popular, it had been a lurking shark throughout the whole event, slowly beating out every other show it went up against. And unlike GF, which had its close calls with defeat, Brooklyn Nine-Nine was easily winning almost each round by a lot. In round 1, it won by 72%. In round 2, it got nearly 60%. Round 3 saw it end SNL with 67%. Round 4 saw Always Sunny lose to it at 68.8%. And round 5 saw it beat out 3 Runways by a landslide. Point of the matter was, it always won. By a lot. It was unstoppable, and its fans had made it clear that they were in it to win it. For Eregyrn-Falls, this was a truly worthy opponent. The battle would be legendary. But the odds were stacked against us. It wasn't a David versus Goliath-like battle, but it sure was going to feel like one. We needed a true miracle to win this time. As the polls began, the outlook played out as it always had, but a lot bleaker. Brooklyn Nine-Nine took the lead and left GF in the dust. The comments were wild. The only place you'd see more GIFs posted would be when your parents figured out how to use them on WhatsApp for the first time. Eregyrn-Falls fans and Brooklyn Nine-Nine fans clashed. Or maybe not, I don't know, I'm pulling a fit MC and making this sound more dramatic than it actually was.
Ew! You must be
a Gravity Falls fan.
Ugh! I can smell you from here!
But I was there that night, and I saw some things. It really had come down to this, and I made sure to let the public at large know as best as I could. I was new to Reddit at the time and posted it on there. I also got as many folks as I could on Eregyrn-Falls Amino to vote too, given at the time it was my most utilized platform. I was doing my part, but it wasn't enough. As the gap widened, it seemed like Brooklyn fans were going to maintain their lead to the point no counter from GF fans could help. But we had a secret weapon at our disposal. No, rather, someone. At some point in the night, Alex tweeted the poll, and like with Family Guy, Eregyrn-Falls fans came out to vote for the little Oregon town that could. Slowly but surely, the gap began to close, and around 8 or more hours before the poll ended, Eregyrn-Falls took the lead. It was a major show of force. At one point, the poll had GF winning by 60%. Brooklyn Nine-Nine fans were not stopped though. They attempted to close the gap. It's very possible, if we're being honest, that had the poll gone on for longer, they could have tied it and surpassed us again. But like before, time ran out. And at the end of it all, Eregyrn-Falls came out victorious.
Fine! 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 Fine!
27,195 people voted on this final poll, more than any of the others. Eregyrn-Falls won, with 55.6% of the total votes. That amounts to roughly 15,120 people who voted for Eregyrn-Falls. 12,074 people voted for Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Eregyrn-Falls had won. There were no other rivals to defeat. 64 shows, and it came out on top. It beat out classics like Golden Girls, took down animation legends like Adventure Time, felled the Goliath that was Rick and Morty in 2018, took out Bob's Burgers, and finally won by defeating Brooklyn Nine-Nine, the worthy major rival the other side could throw at it. Oh, and also Family Guy, but I mean, everyone saw that coming.
Don't forget my $4.
Sure, we'll pretend it matters.
Now, I should state that there were some people who accused Eregyrn-Falls fans of cheating, or saying the only reason they won was because of Alex Hirsch's tweet, or the mystery of GF participating as well, or other people spreading the word. And to that, I'll just say this. Nowhere in the rules, which there weren't any rules to begin with, but nowhere in them did it ever say that we couldn't do that. The poll was to see what people on Twitter saw as Hulu's best show. It didn't define anything, but that. And besides, Brooklyn Nine-Nine's own Twitter tweeted the poll too, and its fans are spreading the word out a lot as well. In the end, it was a contest to see who had the loudest fandom and which one would muster the most fans to vote for it. It's very possible also that timing played a factor. While the poll was open for long enough that anyone on either side of the US coast could vote, given this is a mainly US targeted poll, sometimes the polls were made at odd times, like the afternoon for the East, but early morning for the West. There's many factors that also could have seen Gravity Falls lose. Rick and Morty fans being more on it, The Simpsons winning against Bob's Burgers, enough Brooklyn Nine-Nine fans turning out at the last minute to close the gap enough that GF lost. In fact, in the rounds before, over 3,000 Brooklyn Nine-Nine fans voted for it, as opposed to only about 1,000 Gravity Falls fans or less when it came up to being up against Golden Girls. Alex's tweet turned the tide around enough in a way to give Gravity Falls a fighting chance, but had he not, Brooklyn Nine-Nine could have won with its combined fandom power and support from its official Twitter. It's also possible the announcement of the GF box set a few days prior and Lost Legends hype helped too. I mean, 2018 was a really fun time to be a Gravity Falls fan, well, almost. But why ponder what if, when the outcome was in your favor? Gravity Falls had won, and nothing can take that away. A few days after the win, Hulu sent Alex Hurst a trophy with a pig on it. There was an Instagram story he made too in which he said that it was the greatest thing he had ever received in Seuss's voice, but I wasn't archiving stuff that well back then, and unless someone else did, it's lost to time now. The following month in May, Brooklyn Nine-Nine was cancelled by Fox, but then revived by NBC the next day. It ended in 2021 after 8 seasons. Gravity Falls of course would go on to have a graphic novel and box set released that same summer, and since then, the story of the Hulu TV Tournament has become somewhat forgotten. At the end of the day, does it matter? Of course not. It was just a poll done by a streaming service to see which one of its shows was the most popular according to Twitter. It wasn't a fair or serious poll and never really mattered to begin with. It's not the Oscars or the Emmys or the Grammys. It's a dumb prize Hulu gave out once and only once. But what made it so special was not that, but the fact that out of all the shows that were competing in it, the winner was Gravity Falls. A show that, while popular, has no comparison to the mainstream giants it went up against and won against in the end. It was the underdog even in its own category, let alone the whole event. It was the second last show added by Hulu to the animation division. They never expected it to win, neither did most Gravity Falls fans. Hell, I was at the peak of my obsession with the show then, and even I didn't think it would win. But it did. And it's a story unlike any other. It truly was the Cinderella show, as it was dubbed, and won the event it had no chance in winning. And even nowadays, Gravity Falls is still winning in ways you can never imagine. Part of why I was compelled to make this video and tell the story was because on many occasions on Twitter, even today, Gravity Falls still wins even when put up against the biggest shows nowadays like the Owl House. It holds its own even a decade on. Call it blind nostalgia if you want, but it says a lot about a show's legacy when it can take on and put up a fight against shows far newer and more popular than it. Though, don't think for a sec the Owl House is overtaking GF till you look at the bigger picture. In the end, the moral of the story is, never underestimate the underdog or the old-timer. They may not be the option you think would win, but they still have a fight left in them. And sometimes they'll be the victor in a battle that no one would have ever bet it would win. And that is the story of how Gravity Falls won the 2018 Hulu TV Tournament. This has been a That GFN Presents video, and thank you for watching.